Let's talk about robots and AGI. Ruha, you gave us these excellent robot images. Talk to us about the specter of the robot in history and now, speaking of history.
Let's start with the word robot, thinking about its origin and etymology, drawn from the Slav robota, which means servitude, hardship. And so, anytime we're talking about robots in pop culture, in my view, it's a way to channel our anxieties about human dehumanization. So it becomes this kind of proxy for thinking about all of the ways that human labor and human agency is diminished. And that, in my view, there's two stories that we're routinely told about robots, emerging technologies more broadly. The first, is that dystopian story. They're here to slay us, right? They're going to take all the jobs. They're going to rob us of our agency, everything bad associated with technology. And really, that's the narrative that Hollywood loves to sell us. The Terminator, the Matrix, the list goes on. On the other hand, we have the techno-utopian narrative, that everything good is associated with the progress, the future. It's going to make everything more efficient, less biased, more neutral. And this is the narrative that Silicon Valley, until very recently focused on selling us. And I think the thing that I really want to point out is that although on the surface these seem like opposing narratives, they have different endings to the story, right? One in which we're slayed, one in which we're saved. They share an underlying logic, what we would call a techno-deterministic logic, which is just a fancy way of saying that we assume that technology is in the driver's seat, propelled by a will of its own. But the human, going back to the first part of our conversation, the humans behind the screen are missing from both of those scripts, right? All of those values, assumptions, desires. And so we have to pull back that screen, recenter the us that's actually monopolizing power and resources and imposing that vision onto those who are treated like automata. And you see the signs here that people are holding up, pushing back against the diminishment of their agency and their labor. This last one is from a walkout in St. Paul, Minnesota at Amazon warehouses. And again, we are humans, not robots, as this refrain, this mantra, recognizing, if you can't stop work to pee, you can't call in sick, you go home with your limbs aching, that's a way of really pushing back, this slogan, pushing back against that diminishment. And so again, I use the image of robot and I bring these slogans for us to really think about what is behind that term, what's behind the slogan, to think about the layers of labors that make AI appear magical, whether it's content moderators in the Philippines, whether it's click workers in Kenya, whether it's Amazon workers down the street. Part of it is pulling back the screen and reckoning with what some people call artificial intelligence, that do the ghost work that makes AI appear magical. And then it brings us back to us.
And I think it was actually Jeff Bezos who even called it artificial intelligence when he created Mechanical Turk. And I'm so glad that you brought this image in, Ruha, because it really reminds me of one of the experiences, the first Amazon fulfillment center that I ever went to in New Jersey. The thing that really struck me was just the amount of bandages that people had, like the repetitive strain of like bending down to pick up objects and put them in boxes, and just the amount of like physical pain that was on display. And then, these big whiteboards that said, we want to hear your voice, share things here. And, people were asking things like, why can't I get a day off around Thanksgiving? And it wasn't changing anything. It was this kind of broken feedback loop. But you were just seeing sort of, again, in really sharp contrast, just how difficult this is as a place of labor.
Some warehouses have these phone booth size, or we might say coffin size booths called Amazon, that you can enter and smell lavender and have a meditation going and some very calming images. And I think about that Amazon, how it's not just in Amazon, but there's so many of our workplaces that have a corollary to that sort of, mental fix, mental health fix, wellness fix that doesn't get at the underlying conditions that people are actually working in.